I'm really pleased to be here sharing this space with all of you. My name is Maria Eugenia Sigüencia, but you can call me Mari. That is completely fine. And today, my colleagues from Ecuador will be joining. This is Fausto Cardoso and Andrea Jara. They will join us in a minute. But also, you will have seen in the program Alicia Tenze. Unfortunately, she cannot join online today because she is traveling. But she has prepared a video that I will also be sharing with you with another experience that she has to share with us. So we are, as you can see, we're part of the University of Cuenca, and we are part of a research project which is called City Preservation Management, CPM. You will hear about this for some more couple of times. And as we are also partners of Ilucidare in its chapter Ecuador. So that is why we are now here sharing these experiences. Today, what we have in the presentation is social aspects of innovation in heritage. And I have to warn you that I know this is the most difficult, probably, expert session that we have, but I hope we can do this together, and we can be really on time to be back to the city center. So, yeah, let's do this. I have prepared, or we have prepared some material for you to participate, because that's the actual idea, that you also be part of this session. So, in the first part, we will be presenting a video about experiences in Ecuador. And after that, we will want you to participate, and you will see how. Then we will have, after this video, a brief explanation, but a little more detail of 3 case studies in Ecuador. And afterwards, of course, we will have a closure with some reflections, questions, if you may have. So can you go to the next, please? So while watching the video that I'm going to display now, to the next, yeah. So while watching the video, I will kindly request you to do 2 things, okay? The first one is you reflect about 2 keywords, so it's really short, that define innovation through social participation. That's quite easy. Hopefully you will get inspired, motivated by the video, or you can think about this. And the second thing is that from the experiences you will watch, does any of them seems to be like one in which you have yourself be involved in your own practice? It doesn't matter from where it comes from. We are actually, I forgot to say, but we are architects working at the Faculty of Architecture in Ecuador. But it doesn't matter. These experiences that we will be sharing, they come from different backgrounds. So those are the 2 things that I will request you to do. This is a 12-minute video, so okay, you can now please help me with the video. Please don't forget those 2 things.
For more than a decade, the City Preservation Management Project, CPM, of the Faculty of Architecture and Urbanism at the University of Cuenca has worked simultaneously in urban and rural territories. In the urban areas in the city of Cuenca, whose historic center was recognized as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1999, and in rural territories in the village of Susudel, inscribed as a National Heritage Site in 2013. Cuenca is a city with more than 500,000 inhabitants, considered as an intermediate city in Ecuador, and whose main economic activity is commercial and services. On the other hand, Susudel is a small community of approximately 800 inhabitants, located 90 kilometers south of Cuenca in the Ecuadorian Andes. It is a peaceful and modest community that lives mainly from agricultural activities and the production of handmade bricks. These territories have been considered living research laboratories where academy has enriched its understanding of heritage issues through processes of co-creation and accompaniment of initiatives developed by community, institutional, and private actors, offering technical tools for the proper management of the space and for creating conditions to facilitate dialogue and reach consensus decisions amongst all the stakeholders. In Susudel, since 2011, the CPM project has been accompanying a community development process with a participatory approach, which began with the idea of solving a construction problem in a house that put the inhabitants at risk. This local need was the seed the crew taking as a reference the expression, "One man cannot build a house, but 10 men can build 10 houses very easily, even 100 houses," by the Egyptian architect Hassan Fadi, to connect the social capacity of Susudel with the technical and management capacity of the university to act as a facilitator in the implementation of the first so-called maintenance campaign. This activity consisted of the intervention works developed in earthen traditional houses in 2011 and a subsequent campaign in the graveyard in 2013, both in Susudel. The campaigns propose an organizational model for carrying out preventive and curative building conservation actions with the support of various actors working hand in hand with their own capacities and strengths. Based on these experiences, projects were activated for the diversification in the production of brick and colored earth from 2013 to 2019, as well as the joint construction of guidelines for the construction of housing with vernacular systems between 2015 and 2018. Following these activities and in a similar procedure between 2018 and 2019, a participatory research and design process was launched for the heritage complex of the Casa Hacienda de Susudel. In parallel, in the city of Cuenca, Susudel's maintenance campaigns motivated the execution of the maintenance campaign in the neighborhood of San Roque in 2014. Later, through the research line of historic urban landscape of the CPM project, diagnostic workshops were conducted with focus groups in the different parishes of the urban area and concluded with a visionary conference in 2015 to promote a collective reflection that contribute in the generation of a participatory diagnosis. As a result of this experience, a project was activated to analyze the heritage values in two neighborhoods, San Roque and El Vado, for a comprehensive and participatory management in 2015. This experience fed another of the research lines of the CPM, Heritage as a Resource of Development, which look after the identification of the social, economic, cultural, and environmental resources, as well as the problems of the site, throughout an interdisciplinary study. In 2016, the research team left their desks to contrast the technical findings with the community. Several workshops were held and various listening techniques were used to understand the richness of the territory and its conflicts from the local stakeholders' viewpoints. In 2017, a self-diagnosis or participatory diagnosis was jointly consolidated from the different perspectives: academic, institutional, and community. After a better understanding of the study area and based on a series of participatory methods and instruments, in 2018, possible scenarios, main ideas, and several strategies for the activation of cultural resources in the neighborhood of El Vado in Cuenca were jointly created and proposed with the community. This is how the program Cuenca Lives with its Heritage arose. In the framework of this program, the Huertas de la Buena Vida project was initiated, which seeks to activate of gardens as spaces of environmental vocation in the neighborhood of El Vado. In 2019, the initiative for the raising of awareness about gardens finally received institutional support, and an agreement was signed to start the implementation of pilot gardens. In addition, in the same year, a community reflection was initiated for the construction of a comprehensive urban-rural intervention strategy with the support of the Ilucidare international project in its chapter Ecuador. This project strengthens the articulation between local governments, academy and community as it looks for innovative, heritage-driven actions and capacity building. In December 2019, coaching sessions were held both in Cuenca and Susudel, where the needs of the community and the area in which they wanted to be trained were established. During this year, another project, the International Team Project, was also activated. This one seeks to deepen the understanding and activation of organizational principles of the Indian tradition in Ecuador to be used in favor of the conservation of the built cultural heritage. In 2020, in the context of the restrictive measures and confinement due to the pandemic, the community of Susudel decided to promote agricultural production activities in the area, and after the closure of the Oña market, the closest major village and the canton capital, its main supply point on Sundays, took advantage of an incipient commercial activity that offered its products along the streets in Susudel to launch the creation of a local market on the explanade of the Plaza de las Escaramuzas, thus giving rise to the Placita de Susudel, a weekly peasant market that is held regularly every Friday. The local Ilucidare team accompanied the efforts of the Susudel community through a participatory design process that began with preparatory meetings in May 2020. Subsequently, week by week, co-creation workshops built a sustained decision-making process that was gradually implemented in the Placita. At the same time, during the 2020 pandemic, the Huertas de la Buena Vida project advanced in the implementation of other gardens despite the restrictive measures imposed. The commitment of stakeholders and the results of the many projects developed in this area of El Vado motivated its inclusion in the Recetas project launched in 2021 with a proposal based on cultural and nature to mitigate loneliness and health issues in urban areas. The processes are currently underway during the year 2021. The Ilucidare project is developing capacity building sessions around the interest in promoting the urban-rural relationship Cuenca-Susudel and consolidating the community processes initiated in 2014 and 2011 respectively. Thus, it is evident that the experiences developed in these two areas promote the development not only of projects, but also of processes in which the participation of society becomes the key of social innovation in this part of the world.
Do you remember the two questions that were requested at the beginning? So maybe we can shift to the first activity related to it. So the first activity was, remember, as it says, reflect about two keywords that define innovation through social participation. So you have already those two keywords on mind. So unlike other sessions where you cannot use your phone, actually I'm going to request you to use your phone right now. So you can go to the next slide, please. And I hope they work, so you can please point. They're both the same, but I didn't know exactly which distance were you approaching from. Were you able to enter? Sorry if I'm disturbing. Oh, what? No. No internet connection at all? Did it work? Did it work? Yeah? You're getting to the web. Yeah. Okay. If you're getting, please. Yes, you have to enter. Remember, two keywords. Yeah? You can come back to the. Yes, back. Yes. Oh. Remember, two keywords that define innovation through social participation. So what you get in your mobile is exactly requesting two words. So you can fill it in. Is the Mentimeter. I think that's the website that you are getting. And you have to add two keywords. Okay. Is it clear for everyone? Yeah, more or less. Have you already filled in the two keywords and send it? Yes? Yes? You have any problem, just let me know. Yeah? Yes? Sorry, we trust in the Wi-Fi connection. It's all on us. But okay, while you're filling in, I'm going to request to go to the results. Yeah? So, let's see. Thank you for your cooperation. This is the first word that comes bigger, you see. So this is actually the result that you just gave us. So the size of the word actually are showing how frequently those words are being said by you. Yeah? We can refresh maybe another one aspect has been tackled. Okay. So we have cooperation, participation, dialogue. Well done. In big, this bigger. That means that we are looking at the cooperation and participation as a source of mean of innovation. You see? So as I told you, don't forget about those three words that luckily came. So cooperation, participation, and dialogue. I'm not telling that the other ones are not important, but I think that when we start to think about innovation, when it comes to social, it's really difficult to think about something that it works everywhere, because you see we are all different, and this is the richness of what we have. But actually, when it comes to participation, dialogue, and comparison, there are ways that we actually have used during our research to reach some of the results that you will see in a moment. Of course, the rest you see: listening, renovation, open-minded, participation, maybe that could join the participatory, co-creation, that's a good one, we will come back to that. Technology, okay, participatory diagnosis, oh, that's good. You've seen already in my presentation. Heritage-led development, empathy, listening. Thank you very much for participating. And let's hope now you can finish looking at the video, because you remember the second task that you had is to think about, is there any similar experience that you've been involved in? So I don't know how lucky you feel today, but as I told you, you had to think about some experiences. And not all of us have the opportunity to share those experiences today because, you know, we want to go to a city center. But I will request you to, don't do a mess, but there are 3 persons randomly selected because they have a post-it in their chairs. So please check your chair, and I think it's underneath somewhere. Who's the lucky one? Have you seen it? Some reliefs? So, that's participation. You told me about this is innovation, you know? Okay, who got the papers? There? Okay, you want to start, please?
So I have a story to share. We, in our town where I'm from, it's 15,000 inhabitants. And the organization Friends of Heritage was founded in 2005 for the purpose of establishing a local museum, because we didn't have a local museum. So all the activities until 2013 were very much low profile, just advocating, raising awareness that we have to have a museum. And then in 2013, we organized a local campaign with several activities, engaging local population, organizing lectures, talks, workshops to raise even more awareness. Why do we need a local museum? And we organized a petition as well to raise, to get more signatures for the local government that they finally organize the city council to establish a museum. And we were lucky because it was an election year of the local governments. So every political party had a museum in the program. And finally the city council founded a museum, which was great. And it was based on this participatory approach, engaging the local community to support the museum. So it's not just, so it was really a bottom-up process. But bad side of it all was that after the museum was founded, the politics decided to exclude the civil society from the process of building up the museum. So it's kind of was left in the air while the civic society and the public could participate more, but they decided to exclude the public and the civic society until today. So we have struggled to get back into the race. So this is our story.
Sorry, who else had the... Okay, thank you. Thank you, great story.
It's quite funny that I should get the post-it because I've been basically doing research into a series of activities on the other side of the world in China, which are actually very, very similar. And it's funny that we talk a lot about, you know, context-specific interventions, but then when it comes to community engagement, things end up being quite, you know, similar everywhere. So I've been doing research in the last couple of years about a series of innovations, and it's interesting because it's not me that I termed them as such. It's actually, you know, the Chinese people working on it, and they've kind of coined this term for what they're doing, which is quite interesting from a kind of discourse point of view, let's say. And what they consist of is basically academia partnering up with local communities to foster urban regeneration in like inner city inhabited residential areas, basically. Where they are helping the local community to develop community gardens, and community gardens which are basically accompanied by a series of different events and things like that. But maybe what's kind of interesting about what they're doing is not you know, not the end in itself. So the fact that they are developing these community gardens, but the whole process that they've established to consult the community, to create a sort of, to have this co-design process. does it work now? With the final goal of community building and building social capital. And like helping the community to self-organize in order to be able to address other issues that they have in the future. So it's kind of like, do I have to keep pressing the button? Ah, sorry. Anyway, I think, yeah, I'm kind of done. Sorry, I'm pressing really hard. Yeah, so anyway, what they're testing. They are testing out different processes through which they can empower the community to come together and to form a sort of informal grassroots organizations so that they can then be able to address other problems that they may have, such as restoration, such as I don't know, different residential area management issues and things like that. So the idea is that when, you know, the academic groups leave, the community would be able to kind of, yeah, to essentially have some sort of form of grassroots organization. So yeah, it's interesting. The community gardens are basically just a means to establish a process. So yeah.
Yeah, who found the fourth? The third? You? Okay, there you go.
I think I joined in late, so I am not too conversant with the content of the video, but with inferences made from the contributions made from my two colleagues, I would want to say that what I can touch on is back home, there's this unofficial cloth which has several design patterns. So it's called the kente cloth. And any Ghanaian that you might come across, as soon as you mention that, that person will be very invested in talking to you because it's something we take so much pride in. However, the way in which it's been weaved or it's been woven is still extremely traditional. We use the traditional means of doing it. And this has been in existence for close to, if I'm not mistaken, 2 centuries or 3 or even more. So there's a myth to it, and over time it seems that we are losing touch of this particular intangible heritage because for the most part, the most important thing is the design process and not the outcome. So much of the focus or the importance of the whole thing is who designs what and the knowledge that comes with it. And again, with the advent of modernization, we are losing this with time. And over time as well, there are Chinese ones on the market, which are gaining traction by the day, like printed versions of them. And in this case, how we came in was, that was back in school, most of the heritage students. I didn't do heritage, by the way. My bachelor's was in economics, but there were heritage guys around who were very invested in this particular idea, and I used to work with them closely. So there was an initiative by the UNESCO office in Ghana to come up with processes in documenting this particular process of the weaving process, and then the stories behind the process, because it looks like there's not going to be continuity after a certain generation dies off. And there's that fear. And I don't know whether I'm answering the question very well, but what is happening here is there are now focus groups within the communities where these woven materials are being made. And there's that bottom-up approach where, yes, there are people who came from the capital, that is Accra, to these communities to tell them about the essence of what they do, because for the most part, to them, it's just, I am weaving. It's something my grandfather passed down to me, and I'm doing the same to my kids. But over time, my kids go to school, they have access to other materials, and they are not invested in the process as much as we used to in the past. So again, there's that bridge and continuity, which seems to be developing, And this is where we came in. So the initiative was to come up with several programs to create community awareness, because they already have this already. They have this already, and nationally we have pride in these designs. But the people who make them do not see the essence of it, because to them it is something normal, right? But broadly we see it in a different light. So to sum up, what has been established is there are local groups that consistently teach the younger ones the importance of the process and how to continuously document them, especially those who have family members who do the weaving process. I don't know whether
Thank you. It's great. I mean, I'm really happy that you shared these experiences, but that was exactly the objective of the video, was to try to gather the information and to realize that, I mean, we can be here telling you stories about what we find innovative in the processes that we develop, but there is always stories behind when you think about your own context and how people has tried to improve as you say, the processes of passing things from one generation to another, or actually working with the community, or trying to be strategic, not to go directly saying cultural heritage, but maybe by looking at the gardens and seeing how we can through that also integrate the conservation of cultural heritage. So I'm really glad again, because this opens the floor now to the three experiences that we are gonna shortly tell you about in Ecuador and a little bit more of detail. And they actually, as I said, we are architects and we start from the beginning trying to innovate in the participation of people in taking care of built heritage. But then I'm going to start with the first one, which is referring to the build heritage. But then we will move to a design process, which is actually to constructing or to developing something new. And then we will end up with the mercadito, the placita that you saw in the video as well, where you have an idea of not only about tangible but intangible features that also Daniel has shared ideas with us. So please, can we go to the presentation? Yes. So the first one, as I mentioned, it's referring to a cultural built asset, and it's the cultural heritage maintenance campaigns. I think I heard also the campaigns going around, and we trigger participation processes through these campaigns. So I'm gonna briefly, as I said, I promise, how did all it started? Okay, let's turn it on. So, as you already saw in the video, we are working both in urban and rural areas. So, Cuenca is a World Heritage City, and Susudal is a small village, which is also part of the national heritage of Ecuador. And we have experienced, together with our research group, the CPM Research Project, and with the cooperation with the universities in Leuven, we started the processes of looking at some street with a lot of houses which were in really bad state of deterioration. So around 50 buildings were done minor activities of renovation in 2011, and then in 2013 the graveyard, which also has this representative iconic meaning for the community, they intervened the entrance. They did it again with traditional methods and techniques. So this kind of inspired also to the urban areas, and in Cuenca two neighborhoods which are not the most iconic, but they are humble houses. 20 houses in each of the two areas were also intervened, and in 2013 and in 2017. But they both of them have similar characteristics. So all of them, they were in really bad state, but they also have values because of their constructed on earth, and they are losing the interests of people because they want to construct in new materials. And something else that I think is the most important is because the lack of economic resources. So in all of the situations, the owners didn't really have the opportunity to restore them by themselves. Sorry, next one. So what is the actual innovation that we start to see now, just looking from far already? So we understood that the processes, we couldn't oblige people to work with a process, but we took an Andean principle called an organization system called Minga, which is an actual work based on reciprocity. So I work for you and you later will work for me. And this is all how it used to work in the past, but it was not used for restoration of houses. It was used for agriculture, it was used for watering, and it's all depending on common good. So the community organization system in Susudel was much easier to implement because here in the rural areas, this organization system still was working on. And then the challenge was to take those principles of Minga also to the city. Here it was a little bit more difficult because the conditions of the urban areas are really different. But we learned also some other experiences from going to work with people in the city. What was the actual objective? Was to start a process, yeah, not a project, but a process with the people. So we start by talking to them and not being someone who gets or gathers information from them, but to just a facilitator to make a self-reflection of what are the conditions actually in the neighbors or in the places where they live, and to try to understand the social sector. So what are the actors that are there? I remember from your example that probably you already sat together, but then afterwards some people was put apart. But it's, yeah, the process that we are trying to do is actually to see from the beginning what could be the potential, you know, fights or groups that do not interact or have problems between them. And then something that we also consider that is a good shift from what we used to do before is to create the spaces for returning of the information. So we normally are used to go to the field and gather information, make surveys, and then, if I might talking to from the academic sector, doing publications. But actually where we are trying to move is to give a return of this information to people. So to say, okay, we're coming again, and this is what you told us. Please validate this information. Let's work together. And this creates not a diagnosis from zero, but from a self-diagnosis. With this, we are empowering the community to have a driving force so that they find themselves and they create new proposals based on why they consider it's the more important through democratic networks and eco-organizations. So you also mentioned something about organizations. Out of these processes, we had the opportunity to promote an spontaneous motor or engine group that we called, that was people really motivated before and after the process of the campaign. And this is actually the group that we want them to be sustainable on time. So they themselves will look for new projects to develop. In the actors involved, what we got in this specific Herrerias campaign, we got 4, main groups of actors. So academy, as I mentioned, facilitators, students, professors, researchers. So through students, we are also going to the new generations and making some awareness over there. And then we have the community, so the owners, the neighborhoods, and the board itself of the community, and the church, which is actually very important in Latin America. Then the private sector also included because the master builders that still know how to do the urban architecture, and then we also have private suppliers as sponsors and technical advisors. From the public institutions, we of course try to reach as much as possible and involve them through the municipality and heritage institutions, but one public actor was really important, was the army. Normally they do voluntary work, but never before for such an event where they will be part of the workforce to renovate the houses. That was, for them, even a learning process. So we mixed those people in groups to work for the restoration or intervention of the houses. So in the methodology, we do the analogy to medicine. So we went through the analysis, diagnosis, the therapy, and the control. They talk from themselves. The first is the analysis where we did documentation, but not only on desk, but we went with people to do transit walks. Then the diagnosis, we sit together to understand, combined with social dramas and collective organization. For the actual therapy, is the intervention with this multi-actor Minga. And one important thing was the control. We didn't do this and then say bye. We came back to say, okay, what has happened? We encourage also students to come back and to do processes for analyzing what happened next, and if the people itself, the owners, can start to give some symptoms of the houses and how they were doing after the renovation works. So in the results, I think someone already said that, but the most important probably is not the result as such, but the methodology that has been created. And we see already an enhancement of heritage buildings, of course, but beyond the physical aspects, the most important is the reactivation, because we know that the organizations were there, but the reactivation of stakeholders networks started to be built up from this very example. So with that, I will jump in the next example, which is the video, please. And this example is my colleague that, excuses from her for not being here, but she kindly recorded a video explaining the second experience, the second example, which is actually a design, a co-designed, a co-creation, and she will better explain this to you.
Good afternoon to all of you. I apologize for the inconvenience, but in this video, I want to share with you another experience of social participation, which is the one of the Casa Hacienda of Susudel. So I am going to share the screen. Let's see if I can. Okay. Okay, I hope you're looking it well. So this was a process of co-creation and collective benefit. Let's see why it is not okay. Okay, the Casa Hacienda is a complex located at the heart of Susudel in the south of Ecuador. The first construction dates from 1752. The Casa Hacienda is a clear example of colonial haciendas of Ecuador, and it's configured by a series of blocks articulated around the courtyards that form the main house, and a chapel that stands out in the reading of the landscape. Its condition is acceptable. However, there are even areas in a state of ruins. The current owner has been a constant benefactor in Susudel and has given part of its spaces to the community. with the idea of generating enterprises to activate the local economy. Its intention to donate another part of the building to the community is in line with the community's desire to create new enterprises linked to heritage. For these reasons, the University of Cuenca promoted a participatory process to develop a restoration proposal that would include the owner, his family, and the community from the beginning. So in 2018, teachers and students of the heritage conservation option of the architecture's faculty launched a participatory research and design process in the heritage complex of the Casa Hacienda in Susudel with the mission of recovering the cultural property through a technical analysis that assure its stability and structural safety, but also through a participatory process to learn together with the community and other actors also about the hacienda, its history, the patrimonial values, the circumstances and people who live there and has to do with it, or what does it mean to all of them. So the social actors involved in this process were the owner, local government, institutionalized groups like artisans, the water board, the parochial board, schools, and community groups like the neighbors, young people, farmers. The University of Cuenca was the promoter of this initiative and was the enabler of participatory activities of the community-driven project to guarantee its sustainability in time. There were national actors like the Heritage National Institute, regional and local actors, and the integration of representatives of all these actors was an opportunity for expertise and knowledge exchange among technicians and experts in heritage conservation topics. The local community, as the main user and stakeholder, is in this participatory process a protagonist, where not only their needs and desire are considered for the proposal, but also they take a main place in building this proposal. The focus and methodology of study and intervention of these conservation processes have been nurtured with the contributions of participatory methodologies such as sociopraxis, a participatory strategy that opens the processes to the people's creativity. They are processes more than techniques. Sociopraxis is like a general methodological framework that is built and adapted according to the particular characteristics of each situation, linking to the process the most creative methodological contributions, both theoretical and practical, which facilitates participation in a permanent co-creation process and which allows everyone involved to achieve common goals. This graphic shows the methodological process for the participatory design of the restoration project of the Casa Hacienda. So the initial the participatory methodologies at the beginning of any process, there is an intention. We do not start from an abstract knowledge, but from an applied knowledge. We practice a committed science that wants to transform reality for the better. Two things come together here. On the one hand, a rigorous but a professional ethic with the popular sectors, and on the other hand, a rigorous but flexible methodology based on action and knowledge. So the initial approach phase included the first visits, meetings, and the organization of the academic program. And the students did documental research, transect walks, visit to the Casa Hacienda, informal activities, because it's very important going to the activities organized by the community to get involved in this and to build this confidence. Um, then the listening strategy for the project was designed: to whom and how to listen to the different opinions about the dynamics of the place, its problems, potentialities, situations, stories, and above all, about the value that the house represents to Susudel. I mean, during this phase, students began to listen to the different opinions and perceptions of the community, not only about the property or the good itself, but about their lives and the relationship they have with the Casa Hacienda, in order to have different perspectives so they could evaluate and analyze that information, related also to spatial information, that is, structural and damage service in each of its environments and construction elements. So, timelines, talking maps, interviews, and participatory workshops were some of the techniques that they applied through all this time with the community and other actors. So, after listening and collecting information, historical, socioeconomic, anthropological, urban, and landscape aspects were analyzed, allowing a holistic approach to the site. The conclusions were presented to the community in a new interactive listening workshop in which the first ideas for its recovery emerged. The information was then returned for a joint interpretation of the studies, constructing them with the needs and interests of the key stakeholders involved. During the workshop, the information collected was interrelated, developing a participatory diagnosis among different stakeholders and prioritizing situations that required attention. Next phase was the design phase, and we did many participatory activities to achieve this. In this phase, the meetings that aimed to co-create design criteria associated with the heritage asset and also criteria of community interest were very important. Any intervention made in and for Susudel must take these criteria into account. Another reference for the design was the construction of future scenarios. And one important thing was that a sensitive issue for the community was the loss of ancestral knowledge. So, a self-training workshop on medicinal plants, handicraft weaving, adobe manufacturing techniques, and colored earth paints was proposed. This process led us all to identify priorities and proposals for the use of the property. Finally, the students developed a first draft of a preliminary project that balanced the various input worked on collectively. This proposal was submitted to the Susudel community in a co-creation workshop called Small and Big or Great Architects Workshops, carried out with the collaboration of professors and students from the Belgium Hasselt University, specialists in interior design, and from the University of Cuenca. In the last workshop, ideas, stories, and technological knowledge were shared, building different space scenarios for Susudel's built heritage in working models. There were co-creation workshops and interior design workshops. So the preliminary project was developed by solving the architectural problems, taking into account its typology, morphology, and memory. With this, the constructive and material part of a project was specified, as well as the plans for an integral understanding of the restoration proposal. With this participatory process, a dialogue was opened between academia, institutions, and community around the development approach planned for Susudel, the sustainability criteria that any proposed intervention should take into account, and the concern about the use of vernacular technologies and the application of the principles of restoration and conservation of heritage assets. The COVID-19 pandemic temporarily halted the process since March 2020, but there is a social appropriation of an institutional will to continue, advancing in the reflection and search for funds and creative paths for the accomplishment of the projected words. Thank you very, very much.
Hello? Yeah. So, as you see, this seems to be another step after the first examples that we show. And we finally have the presentation of Fausto Cardoso, who is with us today. He's the director of the CPM research project, and he's going to share specifically the next step, which comes with related to the pandemic and the placita, the marketplace in Susudel. Fausto?
Thank you very much. I want to share my screen. Okay. First of all, good afternoon and greetings from Ecuador to the participants and the organizer for the summer school in Poland. Thank you very much, Joanna, for the invitation and the consideration. It is a pleasure to present the synthesis of a process that has been challenging due to the complex conditions of the context caused by the pandemics since March 2020. The University of Cuenca has already had a long history of cooperation with Susudel, which was recreated in these special circumstances. Yeah?
Fausto, you're not sharing yet?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. In 2020, in the context of the restrictive measures and lockdown imposed in response to the pandemic, the rural community of Susudel decided to promote local agricultural production activities. As of the closing of the Oña near city to Susudel, as of the closing of the Oña Sunday market, its main supply point, the community took advantage of an incipient commercial activity that offered its products along the street to start the creation of a local market on Plaza de las Escaramuzas in the center of the parish. This area is significantly larger than the original street marketplace, thus enabling for physical distancing. This is how the Susudel market, Placita, was born as a weekly peasant fair taking place on Fridays. Susudel's Placita is an initiative based on the concept of an itinerant and proximity market conceived through a process of co-creation and consensus among various actors. It contemplates an innovative view of urban-rural integration as it responds to the cultural particularities of each territory, gradually restoring confidence to its occupants through multiple uses that encourage community meetings under the premise of self-care. The CPM project, through the international project of Ilucidare, with its local team, accompanied the efforts of the Susudel community through the participatory design process, which started in May 2020. Then, the team carried out co-creation workshops, which weekly built a strong decision-making process that was progressively applied to the organization and functioning of the market. In 2011, the Ilucidare project kicked off a community reflection in order to create comprehensive strategy of urban-rural interventions, better articulating local authorities, the academia, and the community. In December that year, coaching sessions were held in Cuenca and Susudel, identified the community's needs and the areas for capacity building. Capacity building sessions were planned for 2020, but had to be rescheduled in 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In view of the pandemic situation and taking the appropriate biosanitary measures, the participatory design process began in May 2020 with preparatory meetings with a small driving or engine group of the Placita. For these meetings, it was decided to carry out technical support to encourage dialogues of knowledge. This creation process encouraged a community reflection between the various actors who are running the Placita and the CPM team to evaluate in a participatory manner the various activities, especially in terms of sustainability, and also to jointly seek solutions to improve the spatial organization and management. The information gathered in the first workshop was given back to the group of participants of the community who consolidated a proposal that would consider the different ideas jointly evaluated in the previous workshop, and to continue to design process in the collective search for improvement for the ongoing Placita initiative. From the co-creation process with the community, the Ilucidare team took the opportunity of a call for the ideas Ideathon, initiated by the Inter-American Bank of Development under the title of The Return to the Public Life, to develop a prototype of furniture for the Placita. The prototypes include 4 pieces of furniture: a multifunctional awning for market stalls, inspired by solutions implemented in the past, but using modern and low-cost material, easily workable by the community, a stage to be placed under the stall system, but visibly larger in scale, a metallic traction trolley for the transfer of goods, and iron supports to install colored flags anchored to the peripheral stone walls of the plaza to make the market day more visible to visitors. This is an image created in Photoshop to participate in the community in the final proposal in a clearer and easier way. At the background, you can see the Susudel Chapel and the relation with the market. At present, the Placita initiative is still in process of evaluation, and the different initiatives of the community and all the social and institutional actors that are directly or indirectly linked to it are being collected in order to awaken interest, encourage participation, and gather suggestions for the future. The revival of the Andean ancestral market has transformed to public space. On the one hand, as a lively and festive space, which bonds the community with exchange and solidarity, strengthening small peasants' economies, and on the other hand, as a space of re-encounter and dialogue with material and immaterial cultural testimonies of the local communities. From this initiative, lessons or guidelines to progressively re-inhabit public spaces in rural and urban contexts will derive based on a self-recognition of the diverse cultural richness of each territory. Several specific initiatives were promoted, not only to stimulate participation and reaffirm commitment, but also to explore the potential of public space in the new conditions and the versatility of its use. The King Pig, los chanchitos, la fiesta de los chanchitos, the King Pig Party was an opportunity to link solidarity, social support with creativity. Precisely next Saturday, this week, we will hold a pottery workshop for children to learn to model their own piglets. Next Saturday, the activities will be covered by the awnings, small removable infrastructures that offer protection and strengthen the character of the public spaces, becoming new festive points of reference for the community. 3 joint capacity building sessions were held in the parish of Susudel and in Cuenca to this date. The rapprochement between the Susudel and El Vado engine groups is evident, reinforcing the importance of the urban-rural relationship and restating their commitment to continue reflecting on this training process during the capacity building sessions planned along 2021. Taking into account the community processes that have been taking place in both territories, Cuenca and Susudel, and taking advantage of the situation that makes it possible for them to converge, we intend to initiate a process of joint dialogue to generate more horizontal, more equitable, more dialogic urban-rural exchange strategies and shared protagonism, which will be an innovative contribution to the relations between these areas in relation to the pandemic, and which could above all serve to good life for the people. We are convinced that heritage is a powerful tool to bring about impressive change in society. We must find in a visionary way in each community the best way to provoke social mobilization. The results will always be surprising. Good afternoon and greetings from Ecuador to the participants and organizers for the summer school in Poland. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Fausto. We are really glad to have heard about this experience in Susudel. As you saw, it seems to be a never-ending process. We will start with something, and then every time we are lucky to find another gap to participate in and to also engage people to do them by themselves. So I think we have some 10 minutes left, and it's right at the time that we would like you, if you may have some questions, thoughts, final reflections, to do it in this short time. So, yes?
Thank you. I have a question for Fausto. So we talked about many nice, of course the projects are very interesting, and I'm particularly interested in the participatory management and participatory decision making and stuff. So you used terms like more horizontal dialogue, social mobilization, which is for me beautiful. I would like to ask you, first of all, how many stakeholders like NGOs or cultural heritage associations existing in these areas? So are there stakeholders already existing and working on these projects? And how difficult was to convince the local people that they are, most of them I imagine, not of a very high education, they are farmers, they are builders. How difficult was to convince them to participate in these participatory activities that you did?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. Yeah, in Ecuador, we have several differences between the different social groups. For example, in the community in which we are working on, Susudel, we are dealing with a social group very, very poor. Yeah, they had very much expectations about what the university could do together with them. So they are very, very open to works. Is a group is very open to work with us in all these initiatives, as you saw in the presentations. But in other places like Saraguro is an indigenous community, very strong community in the south of Cuenca. We found more difficult to start a good relation with the communities because these special communities have a history of relationship with NGOs or external organizations, and they build a not confident relationship with all the people that comes from outside to work together. So in the university, we have different strategies to communicate and to open relationship of horizontal construction with the communities. So we need to see very attent, very precise. So which I want to say is that it's difficult to have a pattern for this kind of works. We must to be very sensitive with the expectations, with the behavior, with the way to life of the communities. Sometimes it's a very long process to open. But in general, for example, I was talking about Saraguro. In our experiences that a lot of NGOs comes to work with them, and they are not confident because they feel that outside groups, NGOs and so on, are taking out information for or work, but they don't have had the devolution for the community in this past experience. This is more or less that I can say you about this very, very important question. Thank you.
Okay, if I may, I would like to go deeper in that question. What would you find, how would you define the most important obstacles in such participatory processes in your cases?
Another very important issue is that the political behavior, the people that participate in political campaigns offer a lot of things for the communities. They are very present in the electoral process, but they go away from the community when the electoral process is finished. So I think the most important thing is talk to the communities with the truth. So we need to say what we are doing, for what reason we are here. We cannot offer nothing, just we want to go together, to build something together in which they have something to learn of us, but we also have a lot of things to learn of them. So I think it's important to start to build a horizontal process from the start point of the relationship. it's not ever easy, but I think it's possible. I think it's possible being honest with in all the process with the communities. I think that is very, very important.
And do you have any publications about those cases, those processes?
Yes, we have several publications. We can share with you some articles. Through Mary can coordinate links, etc. It's a pleasure for us.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah. Now you can actually.
There we are. Is this? Oh, hello. Thank you both for. Yeah, such an interesting project you've got going on. But I'm interested in how you went about setting the timeline for these things. Do you find that if you're working with, obviously it's such a drawn out thing, this process of participation and community engagement, do you find that if you're working with some heritage at risk, you have to speed the process up or maybe even cut corners in the stages, or alternatively, do you find that sometimes the process is so long that momentum is lost? Like, how do you go about deciding how long this thing's going to take?
Yeah, that also is is very good question, because in our past experience, we had different reactions of the communities around the feasibility to put in track the experience. For example, in the campaigns, in the maintenance campaigns that we have do in Susudel, the first one, we need only 3 months of preparations with studies and research of the students, preparation of projects, etc., organization of the community, etc. And it was very, very impressive for us also that the time was very, very short to prepare the first campaign, the first maintenance campaign. But when we started to work in Cuenca in 2014 or 2018, we need 1 year of work with the community, not only for the complexity of the heritage that we have in our hands, but also for the difficulties of the relationships between the members of the community. The community is what each community is a universe. There are people very enthusiastic, but there are also people very difficult to manage. There are people very propositive and proactive, but there are people very negative that can do a bad influence in the process. So we need to be very, very we need to put very much attention to this aspect to manage in appropriate way the process. So the time is first, maybe it's a mystery also for us. We need to manage the time, to accommodate, to fit appropriate in an appropriate way inside the community. But we are aware that we have also limited times inside of the university, no? Because the students must to finish some products in determined times, etc. So we need to accommodate to these special conditions. But the time is a difficult way. It's not only it's not ever possible to do planification with the chronogram, etc. In a rigorous way. We need to be a bit open to management in good way this matter.
Yes, if I can add to that, I think we have gone through a process of error and trial, because as Fausto said at the beginning, we had this model. I remember even the motto that says 3 = 5. That meant 3 months of work and 5 days of actual therapy. So the minga itself, so to you know, to restore, to do minor works in houses. There were 48 houses. We did this in 5 days. It was really short time. But from that we learned, and for the next processes that we develop in Cuenca, which of course many more resources, I think, because of the municipality and other entities joined. But then we realized that I think it's always taking advantage also of these terms of students, for example. We know that the semester ends in certain time, so we know that we somehow have a deadline on that. And this is the way we have somehow evolved as well. And for example, I think Fausto, well, we didn't have really the time to tell you about our experiences, but 2 weeks ago we also have a maintenance campaign in Oña, which is really close by Susudel. And this was also a very, I mean, it's in the middle of the pandemic. You could imagine how also the difficult planning of time could be, but I think it's always taking advantage of something. The political issue is also sometimes going for you and sometimes against you, because, for example, when people want to invest and show that they are investing in cultural heritage, you could take advantage of that certain momentum where managers want to invest. And so, we can put more workforce of students or researchers and do it faster. So I think it's always the fact to try to find the synergies to do these things together. Yeah. So, I don't know if there are any further questions to make. If you have any other questions, of course, of the other projects, we can always speak afterwards. That it's the benefit of me being here. And such a pity that Fausto cannot join us today. We are looking forward to the results of the atelier on Saturday, the Chanchitos atelier with the kids. They're actually going to learn how to make this ceramic chanchitos, and I can always share some photos also of that experience on Saturday. So thank you very much again for your attention. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you very much.